This is the Sahel, a semi-arid region that stretches almost the width of Africa. The Sahel borders the southern edge of the Sahara Desert. The word Sahel means the edge of existence. But in Niger, one of the world's poorest countries, the Sahel is home to many different people. Although it may not look like it, much of the Sahel is a forest region, dry and inhospitable for much of the year, but green and fertile in the brief rainy season. Groups of nomadic herders have evolved a way of life over thousands of years that is perfectly suited to survival in this harsh environment. For generations, these people had a sense that the forests of the Sahel were theirs, and they took good care of them. Then control of the forest was taken over by distant government, but it lacked the resources to manage them properly. Overexploited and encroached on by agriculture, the forests became seriously degraded, threatening the way of life of all the peoples of the Sahel. A revolutionary project backed by the Berkeley Reafforestation Trust is now proving that the destruction of the Sahelian forests can be reversed by returning a sense of ownership and the management of the forests back to the people whose lives depend upon them.
The forests in the Sahel, especially from someone coming from Europe, the first impression they get when they look at the forest, they'll think, well, where is the forest? Because it looks to the unaccustomed eye as being something which is very dry, virtually treeless, and it seems to be something which is very, very unproductive.
Kees and Jill Voigt are forestry experts working in eastern Niger. They have a long experience of the Sahel. With a local team, they're showing the people who depend on the forest that it's possible for them to take control of their forests again, to manage the forests themselves. And they are proving to the government that this works.
The forests here, they need to be looked at as something which has a multitude of uses and needs to be seen in that way. So apart from the wood, it also has many, many other uses associated to it.
There are three distinct groups who use the forests of the Sahel. First, there are the Wadabi. Nomadic cattle herders, they follow the rains north and south in seasonal migrations. Theirs is a sophisticated form of land use. The cattle graze out the grass in one place and are then moved on. To the Wadabi, the communal forest areas have always represented space, stopping places for them and their animals. Their cattle are a major part of the economy of Niger. A second group of nomads, the Tuareg, come down from the Sahara to graze their sheep and goats in the forest. But for the nomads, there is now a serious problem. Cultivation by a third group, the settled Hausa, is encroaching on the forests, reducing the land available for grazing. Conflicts arise. People take what they can from the forest before others do. There is no enforcement of regulations. The forests are being destroyed. The government realized that something had to be done. They agreed to try a radical new approach to the management of the forests. The starting point would be a forest area called Takieta.
The government was looking for ways and means to be able to manage this forest because basically they were not able to manage it. And they asked us to see if we could come up with some sort of people-led management of the forest. And they basically gave us carte blanche to be able to try out participatory methods and see how people could manage this for themselves.
Takieta is over 15,000 acres. Some 10,000 people, nomads and agriculturalists who live in the surrounding villages, depend upon the forest and its products. Space for the nomads and migration routes for them and their animals are only part of the story. Leaves from the trees make a good alternative to grass during the dry season. Wood for cooking is essential. There is no other fuel. Wood is also needed for construction of houses and tents. Fruits and medicinal products are derived from the forest. An important feature of Takieta Forest is its lake, a source of water for livestock in the dry season. There are also fish in the lake, much valued in the surrounding villages. A Sahelian forest is all of these things, much more than trees alone. But all this is now threatened by uncontrolled exploitation.
It's the produce of the forest that permits us to live here. But it's not like it used to be. Now, the trees I need for drum making are becoming scarce.
When there is no other authority at present, people just use things because if they don't use it, someone else from elsewhere is going to come and do the same.
This has led to a rapid deterioration of the forest, a loss of trees, and the beginning of soil erosion.
Because there's no vegetation, the rains wash away the topsoil, and all that's left is sand and rock.
The first step for Case and Jill's team was to make all the users aware that there was an opportunity for them to regain effective ownership of the forest. One of the team, Bashir, met with groups of Tuareg, encouraging them to start a dialogue with the other users, the Wedabi and the Hausa, about how best to manage the forest for the benefit of everybody.
It'll be easier to sort all this out if everyone comes to these meetings, even those who live far away. Then everyone can get involved.
We feel that local people have actually got the know-how to be able to manage these resources for themselves. We first of all had to identify all the different users. The users are the sedentary users, but also a very, very important element are the pastoral users. Both groups basically said, yes, we do want to manage this resource and we do want to do something about it. We then asked them, well, how do you see yourself managing this resource? What do you think this will involve? What sort of structure do you need to do this? And through a process of asking questions, people came up with their own solutions.
All the forest groups were approached, including the Hausa farmers. It's their crops of millet and sorghum that are encroaching upon the forest. They see the forest as a source of new land for cultivation. They want their views to be heard. In the dry season, Wodabi gather round the wells in the forest. Use of the forest and its wells by outsiders can lead to disputes. The Wodabi must also be involved in the discussion process. They were keen to put their wishes and needs to the other groups.
So for us, what we are trying to do is to bring all the different users together, provide a forum where they can actually talk to each other and help set up some sort of system where they can continue to negotiate with each other for the use of all the different resources which are available in the forest.
For the first time, representatives of the three forest groups agreed to meet. Everybody knows what happens when there's no forest management. It's grab what you can.
We've got to say to all these people, all the users, not just the sedentary people who live next door, but all the users, here's a resource. It's degrading rapidly. What do you think about it? And so bit by bit, they decide, yeah, let's manage and let's do it together. And so they discuss what the principles behind that management are going to be. No, the forest must stay as one whole unit. We should not make agriculture inside. All the pastoral groups have got to be included, and so on and so on and so on. They make their management rules.
Once people realised that the project team were there to help them, they quickly got down to discussing what to do about the forest.
The work basically involves working with people so that people can look at their own problems and that they can discuss with each other, understand the problems of other people and negotiate with each other on how to use the common resources together.
They formed a committee representing all the people who had an interest in the forest, from each of the surrounding villages and from the nomad groups. They called themselves Kutayani, which literally means help me in Hausa. It refers to the forest crying out for help. They elected one of their number, El Haj, as president. El Haj lives, like them, in one of the villages. It falls to him to pull everyone together and to find a way through the inevitable disagreements. The next step was to agree the boundaries of the forest. This job was given to a Wadabi, a Tuareg, and a Hausa chief. Like everything else, it involved a fair degree of compromise. The Hausa chief owed much of his power to his right to give land for farming. The Wadabi and Tuareg conceded that the boundaries of the forest could be fixed a little in from the edge of the existing fields, so that the chief would be able to offer land for a year or two more. The agreed forest boundary was recorded by a global positioning system. It's now marked precisely with posts. No agriculture is permitted within this area. One of the most urgent tasks that Kutayani identified was to replace the lost tree cover. The villagers started a replanting program, growing seedlings in the villages and then planting them out in the rainy season. In the degraded areas, more than 12,000 catchments have been made over a 5-year period to retain rainwater and topsoil. Tens of thousands of seedlings have been planted in these catchments. This is the start of a program to reverse the soil erosion.
The local villagers came by on a village-by-village basis to plant in an area which was agreed by everybody. Last year they managed to plant 20,000 trees. These trees were produced by local people. They cost nothing. This was on a voluntary basis. The association has got its management plan which it's following, where on a steady basis it's actually rehabilitating the forest and making it a much, much better place to live.
The Kutayani committee meets regularly, and not just to hear grievances. They have drawn up and documented a detailed management plan with strict rules for the use of the forest. There are specific fines for those who ignore them. The committee has instigated a system of forest guards, complete with bicycles, to police the regulations. One of their jobs is to ensure that the flocks don't stray into replanted areas. The forest lake also needs to be managed, for the livestock and for the fishing. The lake is regularly restocked. Kutayani has planted reed beds to encourage spawning, and catch quotas are allocated to regulate the fishing.
The lake is part of the forest resource. The fishermen pay Kutayani to fish, and they also pay a percentage of what they get for the fish at the market.
The committee has taken action to manage fuel wood, the most important of the forest products. Certain trees, such as Combretum, are coppiced. The wood is cut on a regular cycle, the tree quickly regenerating new growth. In the dry season, the wood is harvested. A fair distribution is made amongst participating villages.
The fundamental change is that people can take control of their own future. The fact that people realize this makes them incredibly enthusiastic.
They cut the trees for firewood for the women. We only take enough that will allow regrowth. As a result, there's a great quantity of wood collected, which is then sold.
The wood is also a major source of revenue for Kutayani. It's sold to towns and villages well beyond the forest.
It's quoted as the best forest in Niger, being managed by people, and it's working very well.
Case and Jill and their team work closely with the regional forest department to ensure that Kutayani has official endorsement. The forest department now sees the work of Kutayani as a cornerstone of their long-term strategy.
Kutayani have been independent for 4 years. They have done in 4 years what it took the forestry department to do in 40 years.
This is going to continue. It's working directly with the people. They're enthusiastic about it. They make the decisions themselves, and that's very important. It reinforces their capacity to manage their own development. They make their own diagnosis and work out their own solutions to make the right solutions for their own situation.
Through the experience at Takieta, we were able to influence the forest policy. That means that the forest law in Niger was changed because of all that we were able to learn from the experience at Takieta. The new forest law that's coming out uses Takieta as a basis for saying people can manage, people have the right, and these are the conditions that you need to put in place to allow people to manage resources. And that's a phenomenal turnaround.
Takieta Forest is regarded as a model for the management of other forests throughout Niger. The law now permits local groups that present a detailed and convincing management plan to take over the management of their forests. In many cases, local communities have been interested in development projects only because of incentives offered by aid agencies, loans, employment or food handouts. They've not been genuinely involved in their own development. Money has been wasted. In the Sahel, the Berkeley Reafforestation Trust makes no direct payments to local people. Donor money is used as start-up finance to help projects get underway, to support the project team, for transportation to bring people to meetings, to start the discussion process. Takieta is now entirely self-sufficient, but the Trust is raising funds to continue its support of Case and Jill and their team so that they can extend their work to other areas, ensuring the survival of the forest of the Sahel and of the people whose lives depend upon them.
We feel it's working. We feel that really we're achieving some good results. Not just good results, very, very good results in fact.
We're working with people to help themselves, and in this process the people know that with our project there's nothing else that they get. They're not getting any money, and the only thing that we're doing is facilitating a process where they can come up with decisions for themselves. We do have very, very concrete results, but it takes time to build, and for many donors it's quite difficult to see because the investment that we make is in the people, and we try and get the people to be able to look after themselves so that you don't need to keep on injecting aid time and time again. It is actually a message for the whole world.
It is a requirement of the Berkeley Reafforestation Trust that all its projects should aim to become self-supporting for the long-term benefit of people and trees.